there is risk involved in maintaining our political freedom and our lives, but we are taking on this civic endeavor and this international aid, which keeps us going.
Well, Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido now talking there with Trish Regan last night, Fox Business, speaking out on the political and economic crisis as it deepens, saying that he will invoke the Constitution, allowing the Congress to authorize foreign military intervention. Mike Pompeo ordering all diplomatic staffers to leave the country. That means the embassy will close. The U.S. will withdraw, he writes. All remaining personnel from the U.S. Embassy this week. This decision reflects the deteriorating situation in Venezuela, as well as the conclusion that the presence of U.S. diplomatic staff at the embassy has become a constraint on U.S. policy. Bringing the A-team, Charlie Hurd, opinion editor, Washington Times, Fox News contributor. Tom Bevan, publisher, Real Clear Politics. Leslie Marshall, Democratic strategist, progressive radio host, and Fox News contributor. Nice to see you today.
Good morning.
When the Americans pull out the embassy workers, you get your attention, whether you've been paying attention to the story or not. It is real at the moment, Charlie.
Yeah, it really is. And, you know, it's obviously a tragedy beyond our ability to fully comprehend at the moment. It's a travesty what has happened to that country over a very short period of time. But, of course, you know, you can't help but put it into the context of what is also the politics of what's going on in this country, where you actually have a lot of people, Democrats talking about socialism and wanting to adopt socialism. I've always felt like, it was always good having Russia there to remind us of what a terrible idea socialism is. This is another really good reminder of what a terrible idea socialism is.
And just how far could we or will we get involved here is the big question.
Well, I think that we're doing the right thing, actually. I don't agree with some of my fellow Democrats with the president's doing, because right now I think this obviously is a powder keg, and I think that the military, I think other politicos who aren't going to get money eventually from Maduro are going to turn on him, and it's even going to become more violent than it already is. But to your point about socialism, I wouldn't agree, because when you look at countries like Germany, France, the United Kingdom, or Canada, we're not seeing what we're seeing in Venezuela, and a lot of it has to do with the leadership, Maduro, what he did or didn't do, and how he constrained all democratic organizations in that country, how he oppressed people that were trying to protest, and the amount of corruption and the amount of money that he pocketed and the payouts. That to me speaks to it more largely than
5 years, Tom.
And an incredibly rich country. I mean, a country with tremendous oil wealth just destroyed. So it is a tragedy. No good options, really, for the United States. We're doing, I think, the best that we can given the circumstances. I don't think the Trump administration really wants to get involved militarily at all, despite the invitation by the opposition leader.
Charlie, freshman Congresswoman Ilhan Omar stepped in with a tweet on the current situation there and wrote this: Trump and Elliott Abrams cannot be trusted to tell the truth about what is happening in Venezuela. We must continue to question the narratives they provide and promote dialogue instead of intervention.
Well, certainly it's important to question. She's not president. She didn't get elected president. And I think that most Americans have a whole lot more faith in his judgment about these things than I think they do in her.
You mentioned Moscow, Soviet Union, no longer around. Mike Pompeo was drawing a similar conclusion. He thinks there are nefarious actors at play here, Russia and Cuba and more. Watch here.
Russia, too, has created this crisis. It, too, for its own reasons, is thwarting the Venezuelan people's legitimate democratic hopes and their dreams. Moscow, like Havana, continues to provide political cover to Maduro regime while pressuring countries to disregard the democratic legitimacy of the interim president Guaido. It's Russia that vetoed the UN-sponsored resolution on Venezuela in the Security Council on February 28th.
You got to think a lot of this is a play right now. And the president did an interview with Breitbart and talked a lot about socialism, Leslie, and your comment here. The headline is seductive socialism would send the country down the tubes a decade or less. Here's his quote. When you tell people free medical, free education, no more student loans, all the different things that you say, it's a great thing to campaign on. But then 10 years later, the country's down the tubes. It's gone.
If we look at our own country, the same thing were said by many leaders with regard to two programs that we have that are socialist if you will, in nature, and that's Medicare and Social Security. If you look at the polls, not just Democrats want free tuition, not just Democrats want health care for all, even if they don't want Medicare for all. This appeals to many Americans because they feel when you're in a nation like we are, that is so wealthy, that these are things that should be provided to its public.
I think his best line, Sandra, was, "We're going to give you everything you want and a Rolls Royce in pocket."
In everyone's pocket. Listen, Trump has great political instincts. He understands the nuances here. And I think he is rightfully trying to set up the 2020 election as a contrast, as sharp of a contrast as he can get between the socialist policies, whether Democrats want to call them that or not, that's how Trump's going to brand them, and his version of America, which is, he's reducing regulations, he's cutting taxes, he's trying to fire up the economy. That's a contrast that I think works for him in the long haul. He knows that, but he has no illusions about the fact that it does play well among some folks, including independents, and he's going to have to make the case.
Got to get this in here. The 44th mayor of the city of Chicago, Rahm Emanuel, he's penned a very lengthy piece in the Atlantic talking about the Democrats' hard left turn and how it could re-elect the president. Here's the headline: How not to lose to Donald Trump. A winning 2020 candidate needs three things: authenticity, credibility, and viability. In that piece, he writes this, Charlie, I'll go to you first on it. Earth to Democrats. Republicans are telling you something when they gleefully schedule votes on proposals like the Green New Deal, Medicare for all, and a 70% marginal tax. When they're more eager to vote on the Democratic agenda than we are, we should take a step back and ask ourselves whether we're inadvertently letting the political battle play out on their turf rather than our own.
I'm loath to agree with Rahm Emanuel on anything, but he's exactly right about this. And this is the situation that Democrats are in right now. And as Tom pointed out, if this is a referendum on socialism versus American freedom and American ingenuity, President Trump is going to win. And the difference between this year and 4 years ago, among the differences, is that you have, and of course you also have Nancy Pelosi talking about trying to scrub any impeachment talk. It's all exactly the same thing, where you have these party leaders trying to pull their party back towards the center, and you have these far more exciting characters dragging the party much farther to the left. Very vocal.
So does it scare you more that you agree with Rahm Emanuel, or are you going to agree with me right now? Because last week I wrote this very thing. Rahm Emanuel stole my thunder. Last week I wrote this for FoxNews.com about how the party being pulled to the left is repeating what happened in 2016. We had the Bernie Sanders are, Bernie or bust
exactly
folks.
Right.
We had Bernie sitting there pouting. I was looking at him in Philly at the DNC, and all of his people, poor Bernie, he's not up there. I can't vote for him. It split the party. What happened? Donald Trump became president. We're going to have a repeat of that in 2020. We have different players, and it's going to come down to the AOC group, and again, the Bernie supporters over perhaps Joe Biden supporters.
Like the writings on the wall.
I do think that I worry that pulling the party too far left is going to alienate the moderate centrist Democrats, the independents, and the Republicans who are disillusioned with Trump.
But in that piece, he says we shouldn't abandon our priorities, and goes on to detail them. He then wrote, but we shouldn't fall for Trump's sucker punch. It's a very interesting piece, Tom. Final thoughts from you.
Look, Rahm is also a very smart, savvy political strategist, so I think he's on the mark with this. The one hope that I think Democrats have is that all the progressive types, and now Bernie Sanders, while his ideas were radical, he just bragged about the fact they're now mainstream in the Democratic Party. But if you have 7 or 8 running to the left, that it provides an opportunity for a guy like Joe Biden or someone like Amy Klobuchar to win the Democratic primary because everybody else is splitting the progressive vote.
Yeah. I don't know how you. I think Democrats are in the same position
Joe Biden. He's got
a couple years ago. Thank you. See you, Leslie.
Good,
thank you, Charlie.
Thank you.
Thank you.